Hey guys, welcome to this session. Today we are going to see how to create a serverless web API in ASP.NET Core using Lambda function, and we are going to call it through an API gateway.
So before jumping into the hands-on, let me brief you about the technologies which you are going to use. ASP.NET Core. It is a lighter version of ASP.NET, but an open source and a better performing web framework. It is developed by Microsoft and its community, so you can get all the support from the community blocks. AWS Lambda function. It is a serverless compute service that runs your code without provisioning or managing the servers. It is like you just upload the code and forget about it. Lambda function will take care of its scaling, resource allocation, and even performance. And the best thing is you will be charged only for the compute time. So this is the architecture which we are going to achieve in this video. We are going to hit an HTTP request to an API gateway, which will internally call the AWS Lambda function, and it will invoke the .NET Core API. So the prerequisite will be you have to download the .NET Core SDK 3.1, which is the latest as of today. And we are going to use the Visual Studio Code as an IDE to develop this API. And we also need an AWS account to interact with the Lambda and the API gateway. Before we start with the coding, make sure after installing all the softwares, you should restart the system. So let's start with it. I have already opened the Visual Studio Code. Let me create a new terminal. To confirm whether the SDK has been successfully installed, I'm gonna just check the version of it. So we can see 3.1.3 has successfully installed. Now to create a .NET Core Web API with the Lambda function, we have to install some of the templates from the Amazon. So I'm gonna install .NET new install amazon.lambda.templates. So here we go. It is successfully installed and I have got all the Lambda packages, as you can see. We are going to use this serverless ASP.NET Core Web API template from Lambda, and we are going to create a new project with that. So .NET new serverless.ASP.NET Core Web API, and I'm going to name it as values API. It has been successfully created.
Let me go and open the project folder. So as soon as you open this, Visual Studio will give a pop-up to download the dependencies. Go ahead and download it. You can also download the dependency by going inside the source folder and giving a restore command. So I'm gonna go inside the src and values API, and I'm gonna give a command .NET restore. This will also download all the dependencies and restore my project. Similarly, I will go inside the test folder and give the same .NET restore command. So now you can see both the project has been restored. So there are two folders which got created. The src folder is the actual project folder, and this test folder is the test suite for this particular project. So there are two entry points. One is local and one is Lambda. One is to debug it in local or run it in local, and one is for the Lambda execution. Both will point to the startup class and which will internally point to the controller class.
And also you can see a serverless template which has all the configuration which is required to run this API in the Lambda. Here we can also see the configuration related to S3 buckets which we are not going to use, so I'm going to delete this off. You have to delete all the configuration which has bucket on it. And also we are not going to need the API endpoint. We will be configuring it manually in the API gateway. So the serverless template is ready. Here we can also see that there is a controller method for the S3 bucket which we are not going to use that, so I'm going to delete this. So let's see what is there in the value controller. So this is a default API, a get method with API values as a resource, and that will return a value 1 and value 2 as a string. We can also see there is another get method in which if we will pass the value, it will return a value string. Let's go ahead and run the API and see what we are getting. Running, and that works pretty well. So my API is running on localhost 5001, which is a default port for .NET Core API. So let me see the controller value. Which is a get method, and I'm gonna paste this over here and see if I'm getting the, yes, I am getting the values. Let me change this to my name and see if I'm getting the value. Oh, I have to rerun the program. Yep, it is working fine. And what about the other API where I can pass the value and I can get this value? Instead of that, I can return my name. Let me refresh it again. And oops, and that is also working absolutely fine. So let's go ahead and build the application and deploy it in Lambda function, and let's connect it through the API gateway and try to call it. If it works the same way, we are good to go. So to build the application first, let's stop this and let's go to a new terminal, go inside the source file and the values API and do a .NET build. The build is successful. Let's publish the build. .NET publish in the release mode. So the file has been published. Let me go to the bin folder and search for the published file. So here it is. Let me go and zip it up so that I can upload it at one shot in the Lambda API. So now we just have to open our AWS account, upload this zip folder into the Lambda function and connect it to the API gateway and call it. Let's do that. So I am in my AWS management console. Let me go to the Lambda management console. Here we can go and create a function. I'm gonna name it as values API, and the runtime environment is .NET Core 3.1. Here you can either choose your existing role, or you can go ahead and create your new role anytime you want. I'm gonna select my existing role and go ahead and create a function. So the Lambda function has been successfully created, and a link to that has already been generated. This link will be helpful to connect this Lambda to the API gateway. Let me go and upload the published file. Here it is. And this is important. This handler, you can get it in our project serverless template handler. Just copy and replace this and save it. Our Lambda function has been created. Pretty easy, huh? So let me go to the API gateway. I'm gonna create a new API. A RESTful API will work here, and the name will be values API. Leave the rest as it is. So the API has been created, we just have to give the resources. So in our controller, the resources is API and values, and it is a get method. Let's go ahead and create a resource called API, and then I'm gonna create another resource, values. So let's create a method which is a get in this case. And I'm gonna check this proxy integration which will help me to connect to my Lambda API. I'm gonna paste the same ARN which I have copied from my Lambda function, and I'll click on save. So the API gateway is successfully connected to my Lambda function. Let's test it. API values, this is correct. Let me go ahead and test it, and it is giving me a correct values. Okay, let's publish this API. I'm gonna select a new stage, and stage name is prod. So it has been published. To get the link of this, you have to click on this get, and this is the link of the API. So if I will call this in the browser, you can get the expected result. So we have connected the API gateway to the Lambda function and to the .NET Core Web API. This is a very small example on how we can achieve this architecture. It is pretty easy, and it is a lot more cost effective compared to the EC2 instances in AWS. So thank you for watching this video. If you do like the video, please hit the thumbs up button, and do not forget to subscribe to my channel so that you will not miss any of my video going forward. I'll be back next time with some new technologies, some new concept, and some new architecture. Until then, see you next time.